All right, so let's take a look at the stereo bus. First off, you're going to see it's labeled Submaster. Back when I did my Pro Tools Expert Certification, version 6.4, I can't remember what it was, the instructor called it the Submaster, so it stuck with me. But Submaster, mix bus, stereo bus, all the same thing. My Submaster or stereo bus is a stereo aux track in Pro Tools. That's really, really important. Stereo auxes are the gain structure is post insert. So if I come out here and I write automation to the stereo bus, it's not going to affect the signal going into this first plugin here. It's going to be post. So it's only volume after the processing, which is huge. If you're using EQ and compression on your stereo bus, you may not want, in most cases, I would say you probably don't want that level to change with automation. I do a lot of automation on my 2-bus for songs that call for a bigger hook, bigger chorus to explode and get louder. I may drop my stereo bus -1 for the whole song, pull it up to -0.5 at the pre-chorus, and then explode it up back to 0 at the chorus. And I'm sure you'll see that in this mix for Pro Mix Academy. I do it in just about anything that has a big chorus. So we'll probably see that. But if I were to use a master fader and plugins on the master fader for that, then if I come in here and drop -1 dB, well, that's 1 dB less going into my first set of plugins. And that could be bad. It could be what you want. So it just depends on what you're going for. But I like to make those moves as a whole, shifting the volume, not the gain staging. So kind of a long-winded, janky way to explain that to you, but I hope you picked that up. If not, feel free to email me anytime you see any of this stuff. Hit me, david@davidglenrecording.com, with any questions. So let's take a look. The first plugin here is the Blue Cats Patchwork. And this guy, what it does is I like to layer a couple of different plugins and have the option for more depending upon the song and what I'm working on. And Pro Tools gives me 10 inserts. And sometimes, because I layer these UAD plugins here for color, I can quickly run out of inserts on my 2-bus. It's a little bit crazy. I don't mind. Judge me. It's okay. But I'm going to explain why. The first plugin in the chain is the Slate Virtual Mix Bus. I've used this for quite a while. I like it. If I bypass it, I definitely notice a difference. It's not some magic huge thing that you have to have, but if you have it, I like it. Feel free to use it. For me, it's the first plugin in my chain. Next up, sometimes I use a little bit of widening or stereo imaging. So I have the waves there. This is off from the get-go because can't remember if I mentioned this in the all buses, but I like to do some widening at the all music bus. So if I do it here, it's very minimal, another 5-10%. Depending upon the song, I've been known to push it even harder, and I know a lot of guys have too. So that's there. It's off, ready to go if I need it. Next up after that, I used to use this in every mix. Let me tell you why. For those of you guys who have followed me for any amount of time, you'll know that I used to use the UAD Studer A800 tape. There's the preset. I love this sound. The problem that I've experienced in the last few mixes, it was the Redimidos record that I was recently mixing. The low end for me, I was beating my head against the wall trying to get the low end to work. So I started going through the different plugins on my chain, the all buses, on the tracks. I was just trying to figure out trial and error. Why can't I get my low end to work? I got to the 2-bus. I went plugin by plugin. And when I bypassed the A800, my low end was completely different. So the tracks that I was receiving and sending in at 15 IPS, there's quite a bit of a bump down 30, 40, 50 hertz. I don't know. You guys who are smarter than me can correct me on that in the forum. But that to me was making me have to work harder at the track level to get a tighter bottom end. I like tight, punchy kick drums in most of the things that I mix, not big, boomy, lots of low end, sustaining. I like the low end to kind of punch you in the gut, punch you in the rear as you're driving down the road, and then get out of the way so the bass can be the sustain or the extension of the low end. That being said, as a mouthful, the 15 IPS setting was kind of making that hard on me. So for my personal taste and preference, what I'm doing now is if I like the Studer, I'm using that at the track level and just hitting it harder and getting the character or saturation that I want for the individual tracks, as opposed to using it in a top-down format here. So that's there. If I want to call upon it and test it out, I can, but that's pretty drastic difference that this is going to give you. So I recommend trying that early with your rough mix, seeing how you like it, if you do or don't, and then turn it off. But keep in mind your low end, especially if you're like me and you want to have nice tight kicks. After the Studer, I have the UAD Pultec. You can see there's no EQ. Sometimes I'll EQ, but that's not why I put this here. I put this here because Universal Audio do a great job of emulating analog hardware. And a lot of guys like to have Pultecs on their stereo bus. Well, for me, I like the color of this plugin. However they get that plugin color, the hardware emulation, whatever they're doing behind the scenes, there's a little bit of a volume bump, but there's a little bit of warmth, we'll call it, a little bit of low end that kind of gets jacked up a little bit. And oxymoron there, jacked up a little bit. But this affects things in a nice way, and I like it. So I layered this one, and then the modeling that they did for the LA2, the gray, I like as well. So I use those two. There's no compression here. You can see the peak reduction, and the gain is set to continue the gain staging so that things don't get louder. So there's the first chain of plugins, and then we're going to move into VBC. This one, from I want to say the first week or so that it was launched, I've had it on my 2-bus, and it shapes the sound pretty drastically. There's going to be a little bit of a drop in 100 hertz, and there's going to be a little bit of a boost. I think it's like 3 to 5K or somewhere up in the upper mids. And there's a schematic or an explanation. I think it's on Sound or something. We'll have to look up and give the proper link. But I like what's going on behind the scenes. Again, the character, you can see the only thing that is happening here is sound is passing through it. For the color, for the emulation behind the scenes, Fabrice is a genius. I love their work. I use most of their plugins, and you can see that that's simply there. There's a 1-to-1 ratio on both of these so that there's no compression happening. And the only thing I've done is backed off the gain by 2 dB because there's a gain lift in this plugin just from having it on. So I want to stay true to the gain staging, and I want to hear a proper A/B if I ever go to turn this on or off. I don't want to be fooled by the extra volume. That's the VBC. Moving on in, now we're going to get into a plugin that I like to do actual compression with. This is my bus compressor. It's my go-to. Sometimes I'll swap it for something else, but for the most part, this is going to stay at a 410 auto setting. It's actually not there because I just updated my template and forgot to put it back. But it's going to be a 410, and then auto is what I would say 90% of the guys who are using SSL-style bus compressors are going to land on. Depending upon the song, you may crank the attack and go a little bit more aggressive. You may feel it out and do some stuff. But, excuse me, not the attack, the release. A lot of guys will crank that, test it out. But for the most part, I'm landing there. And I like to use the sidechain filter. The 90 hertz sidechain filter is going to prevent the low end from triggering the bus compression. It's going to make it a little bit more balanced. And that's a good thing. So, bus compression, the Vertigo VSC2 has been a favorite of mine. I've actually been using that up here on my drum bus as well. That's just recently switched from the not even the UAD, the Waves DBX 160. I've switched and started using the Vertigo. And then even that, I'm swapping out all the time on the drum bus. So moving on from there, because the VBC has a little bit of a drop off at 100 hertz, I'm going to come in and I'm going to lift a little bit at 100 hertz and then some, because I like to boost a little low, a little bit of top. Look at this sort of as my console. So if my console has more bottom and more top, then I hopefully have to do less work at the track level to kind of get that Fletcher-Munson curve where we get a little more lows, a little bit of top. It's pleasing to our ears. So you can go Google Fletcher-Munson curve if you're not familiar with that. After the boost there with Hoser on the bottom end, I've got Revival. Whatever the harmonic excitement is, or I have no idea. It's a secret sauce, apparently, for Slate and Fabrice. But Revival, I love this plugin. It's a free one for those of you guys who don't know. If you go to slatedigital.com, as long as you have an iLock, you get Revival for free when you download VMR. And it doesn't expire. It's absolutely free. And it's an incredible plugin. I use it all the time. So I have this on. You'll see that in action when we get to the phase where we set up our tracks, whatever song we're working on this month, whatever track we're doing. You're going to see that in action. But a little bit of bottom, a little bit of top to do it in stages, a little bit at a time. And again, there's some other love going on behind the scenes there. Lift, there was a situation. I was working with my mastering engineer, Joey Fernandez, was always kind of coming to me, man, there's always something that whatever. I can't remember what frequency. Hey, it's bothering me. Can you like do something? There's always something in this one frequency range that you're lacking in your mixes. And so I remember throwing on lift and boosting that a little bit more than what this shows. I don't know, what are we at here? 0.7. I think it was like a 1.5 or something on the mix that he called me out for. But nonetheless, this is something that he liked. I did that. That was the only move I made. He loved it. He was like, there it is. Done deal. Let's print the master. And so I made that change to my permanent template, or permanently in my template, and it's been there since. So I'll turn that on and off after the rough mix, see if I like it. If I don't, the only consequence I'll say, there's pros and cons to different workflows. The only consequence I would say about adding so much top to my template is if I decide to replace the kick drum or the snare drum, and I pull in a sample that was, Slate, the guys at That Sound are my favorite drum samples. My buddy Jordan has hardcoremixing.com, I think is his new site, or heavy music mixing. He changed it, so forgive me, but his drum samples are incredible. That Sound, tons of different great drum sample companies out there. Well, if they're EQ'd with the right amount of top or the right amount of top, and you boost top on the stereo bus, when you push open that sample, you may be fighting against the click and the kick a little bit. So what I find is I just go to the kick track and I'll pull back the click, and I'll shape the kick drum a little bit differently at the track level, as opposed to changing this, because I look at the pros of having the added lows and top on my 2-bus as an overall win, an overall gain of victory for the overall mix. I'm okay with manipulating a little bit in the kick drum to make sure that things fit a little nicely together. But that's the only thing I'll say about boosting the top, is I have to shape kick drum samples a little bit more, is take some of the click out, because it kind of fights against it. So, and then our friend Trimmer here to pull back the gain staging, so that if I come here in Pro Tools, we can hold Control and click on the first plugin. It will bypass all of the plugins in the chain. By doing that, I can listen to what the mix sounds like, or my rough mix sounds like, without the added stereo bus love, and then I can click back it in, take it out, put it back in, back and forth, make an adjustment if I need to, and it's a relatively same volume. After VMR, I go into the Ozone 7 exciter. I used to use Ozone 5 on the stereo bus with the multiband and the EQ. I swapped the EQ out for Hoser, and then I changed, because of the way that I routed into VMR, and then I swapped the exciter for Ozone 7's exciter, because I got rid of using the multiband. Personal preference, after watching the way I was using it, I was compressing really hard against the kind of the 110, 120 to 500 or 600 range, which helped me get louder mixes probably a little bit easier. But I finally got sick of fighting against that. I love a really chunky snare, and if you're compressing 4 or 5 dB against the low mids, it can be kind of difficult. You're pushing way more in that snare, and then you end up fighting against the limiter, and just wasn't working out long term. I did a ton of mixes that I felt like sounded great. I was happy with that in. Decided to ditch it, and it's just a different season. So this is the tape saturation that is in from Ozone 7, and then these extra couple of plugin inserts I'll use for EQ matching. If you're not familiar with EQ matching, it's okay. We're going to see a video in that in whatever mix I do, because I do it in just about everything. Sometimes I'll use the EQ match process to reverse engineer what the EQ analyzer shows me, and I'll go back. Maybe it shows that when I reference, it'll take a snapshot of the frequency range from a reference track. If it shows that I'm way off on the low end with a kick or the bass or what have you, then I may ditch that EQ match, go back to the kick and bass, and work on it again from there. Or it may be a subtle change in the mid-range or something that impacts the track nicely, and I dig it, and I may live with it. I may keep it. But you'll see that in action in the mix as we get going through the track. So more on that to come. Now let me break over. Let me show you the limiter. I use the AOM Invisible limiter. I switched from using the Ozone 6 limiter to this. I haven't tried the Ozone 7, but I love this guy, AOM Invisible limiter. It sounds great. You got the oversampling, crank that up to 16 by whenever you print. It's got suppress, clip, and through. Clip is cool. Some heavy rock stuff I've used clip. Suppress is awesome. The only other thing that I do sometimes make a creative decision to do is clipping with the 2-bus. And it just depends on who I'm mastering with or what I'm doing there. But I use the IK Multimedia Classic Clipper. I'll show you that. This guy right here, and I'll go for half a dB, maybe a dB and a half. Just depends what sounds good. If it sounds good, it's good, but we'll take a look. I don't know that we'll be doing that in this mix, but tons of applications where that could be really cool. Moving on from the actual stereo bus processing, I've got my master fader here with some handy tools. The first one is I've recently fallen in love with Sample Magic AB version 2. Version 1 was great, but there were some things that kind of made it difficult for me. And you may have seen in a previous video here in the mix prep series that I have a refs track at the top of my session. The top of my session, that's going to be for the rough mix. I'll pull in industry references, whatever I feel like for the particular song that we're doing. First off, at the Pro Mix Academy is going to be an Imagine Dragons track, maybe an Everclear song or something else. I'll pull those in up there. Well, as of late, I've been using this guy, Sample Magic AB version 2. I think it was like a $30 upgrade from version 1. And you've got latch and you've got sync. So I can pull in the rough mix, go find it on my hard drive, pull it in, and as long as I set it to the same starting point as the session and sync it, I can click here and go between will be my mix, and then B will be the rough mix. And I can click back and forth. I can level match them, again. And I can level match, and I can listen to mine, listen to theirs, and make good comparison there. And then I can have industry tracks mixed by records that I love, mixes by Tony Maserati, CLA, in this case, Warren Huart. Any of those guys that I respect their work, I'll pull them in, listen. Warren has got me listening to Train, Hey Soul Sister. He loves Mark Endert and that vocal, so I've got that in as a reference. But anyways, so there's Magic AB. Really, really cool tool. Kind of blowing through this pretty quick for you guys. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me in the Facebook group or email me. If we scroll back down, we'll take a look. I want to show you guys my Audio. I just recently picked this up. This is I think it was like a $20 or $30 app, and very straightforward. What this does is you make it active, and you have your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device. You download the app, and it will find your device if you're on the same internet connection or Bluetooth or whatever. However, I think it's Wi-Fi. And it will stream when you turn that on to your phone. So you can check your mix on your phone. I have an iPad Pro that I don't recommend anybody go get. It's a very expensive Netflix device, or in my case, reference speakers. The speakers on it are incredible. So if you want an iPad with better speakers, by all means, go spend the money on it. But anyway, so you can reference your mixes to your mobile devices with this guy. You can check that out. Again, let me click real close so you can see. Audio. You go to Google, search Audio, you will find that. And that's a great tool. Next up is a version of Pro Q2 here. This could be, it's on a separate screen. Let me pull that over. This could be any EQ for you. I love the Pro Q2, so that's my go-to. Pretty much I have a high pass and a low pass filter. And you'll see me do this in the mix process. I will take and listen to, I'll turn this guy on, and I'll listen to what's happening, 20, 25 hertz. I'll just want to feel, are my subs shaking the way that my reference track is shaking? And I'll listen, and then I'll kind of open this up a little bit, 5 hertz at a time, go to 30, 35 hertz, check out mine, check out theirs. I'm going to go up to about 50. I'm going to check mine, check theirs, 70, 100, etc. Once I'm happy with my low end, this is really going to reveal to you guys. If you haven't seen this, I hope this helps you a ton, because I get more emails and more compliments about this process, especially for us home studio guys, than anything else. So 100 hertz and below, I'm going to get my bass right. I'm going to get my kick right. If I don't feel my kick punching as much as I feel industry tracks, then I know I've got some work to do. If I don't feel the sustain in the subs and the bass the way that I feel it in the reference mixes, got some work to do. Once I get the low end right, I like to kind of move this up 150, 200, and then I like to activate the high pass filter, the low cut, and I'll pull that up around 100. Now I can reference the low mids, and I can work my way up from there, etc. So once I get to about 1K or so, then I'll kind of slide that up and check up here and work my way through the top end. So That's my personal way of using it. You may prefer to do other frequency ranges. You may prefer, maybe you want to leave this open. Maybe you want the whole thing and you keep the bottom in there. But I like to work the bottom in. That would be the equivalent of turning your mains off and only listening to the sub. Or once you get to 100 hertz, it would be the equivalent of turning the sub off and only listening to your mains. So I like to do that. I find that it helps me a ton when I reference, and you will learn more about the reference tracks, how much low end or low mids or mid is in the vocal, how much top end. If you reference yours and you click over to theirs and you hear that yours is piercing in 3 to 5K, guess what? You got some work to do in 3 to 5K. So it's not a perfect science because different tracks, different singers, different artists, different, all of that kind of stuff. But it's definitely going to be something that I think will help you a ton. My metering is Isotope Insight. I like to use this. I used to, young and dumb, would be aiming for a specific LUFS. Now I like to just mix the record, and whatever I end up feeling that out at, whatever sounds good to me, then I like to, for big projects, I like to kind of gauge that and aim for a close LUFS or RMS for you guys using the RMS system. Keep an eye on that for a project and keep close. I'm happy with -8, -9, -10. I'm not happy with anything that pushes the crap out of it too much further than that. And I've actually noticed lately I'm doing things to different tracks and different buses to get volume out of them as opposed to volume out of the entire mix, if that makes any sense. Doing things a little bit differently. So being a little more conservative with that. And the final plugin, I think I've already talked about this, but it's SonarWorks. This is the only plugin that if someone's starting out, working in a home studio, I say, man, go buy this plugin. This is a must-have. In my opinion, my perspective, my way of working, this is a must-have. Yes, I'm weird, and I like to work on headphones. It kind of came from necessity, but I also grew up listening to music on headphones, kind of that generation of the iPod, Sony Walkman transition to the iPod and all that. So, long story short, I like headphones, and I find that this could be, even if you have a great room, you think you have a perfect room, there's no perfect room, but even if you think you have the best room and the best setup and the cloud and the reflections are covered and everything's great, you got your bass traps, you spent thousands of dollars in your room treating it, go check out the free trial of SonarWorks and see what this does for you. They've got a whole list of headphones that work with their plugin, and this is just absolutely incredible. It was life-changing for my mixing. And the very last thing I'll say about it, just in case you haven't heard of it, so you can see here the green line is, let me zoom in. The green line here is the corrective curve. You can see the blue, the natural curve of these headphones, the frequency response. I wasn't hearing anything around 30, 40, 50 hertz, and I definitely wasn't hearing it accurately. So you can see from 70-ish and below, there's a pretty steep increase. And what that increase is there for is to help flatten the response of my headphones. So now when I go to boost 30, 50 hertz in a bass or a kick drum, I know when I start to hear it and feel it well, that's accurate, or at least closer to accurate than what my room would have given me. Then whenever you see the low mids, you can see there's a pretty decent boost naturally, 2-3 dB or so in the low mids of these cans. And there's a corrective curve to help pull some of that out and get a flatter response, a more balanced tone from these guys. So it's getting late. I'm a little bit tired, so forgive the rabbit trail. But you can see what that's doing. Go look up sonarworks.com. Check these guys out. They're doing incredible things, and I know they have a lot more coming. So there it is, the 2-bus. Lastly, very, very last thing, you will notice in the videos, my master fader, sometimes at -5, sometimes at -10. That is only because I don't want the output clipping, ScreenFlow, the recording app that I use to do the screen recording. And that is it. There's no logical reason or method for the audio for the master fader volume there. It is just because of the video recording. So as a mouthful, I hope you guys dig that. I hope there's some cool things to learn in there for you. Please feel free again to email me, David@davidglennrecording.com. Go check out the